Hi, welcome to Astro Babble. I'm Donna from Donna B Astrology,
And I'm Linda from Scullywag Astrology.
and today we are going to be talking about the full moon in Virgo. We'll also cover a stone as well as the aspects that will be coming with that. The moon mansion is the eighth moon mansion according to Christopher Warnock's book. It is Aljabaha, I think is how you enunciate it. It is good for buildings, incarcerating prisoners, as well as it's good for power, success, aid in recovery, in healing, improvement, and a support with your allies.
Very
It
interesting.
is of the nature of Mars and Jupiter.
Well, that's
So
interesting because we've
those
got
are
that
the
Mars Jupiter square coming up later. So,
so this will be reflective of it.
mhm. Yeah, interesting chart. Full moon in Virgo. So, this full moon is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is opposite it. Unfortunately, Mercury is in Pisces where it's in detriment and fall. So, but what's kind of interesting is later on when we get to the aspects, we're going to have a Mercury Cazimi when the Mercury and the Sun come together, but that it's going to be very, very closely tied with Saturn as well. So, very interesting. A lot going on in Pisces in the next 2 weeks.
Mm, yes, there is. Yes, and the full moon is going to be happening at 5 degrees of Virgo, so 5 degrees 23 minutes.
Mhm.
And it's just for the record, it's or it's February 16th today that we're recording.
Mhm. Yeah, so Mars and Venus and Pluto cannot see this full moon. They're in aversion. So that's helpful in that Mars and Pluto kind of, you know, they're not aware or I don't know if not aware, but yeah, they kind of can't have a strong effect on this full moon lunation. But unfortunately, Venus, which is a benefic, can't either. Jupiter can see this full moon. It's a trine. So that's interesting. That's nice. And we do have Saturn opposite this full moon, which is really interesting because, as I said earlier, we're going to have a Sun, Mercury, Saturn conjunction. I think it's on the 28th. Yes, the 28th of February is going to be quite interesting. And full moons are all about completions or high points or endings. It's like the harvest. So it may have something to do with something you started at the new moon in Virgo, which would have been about 6 months ago.
And Linda and I did a episode on why you should read your rising sign. So when we go to do the horoscopes, try to pay attention to your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, you can either go to AstroSeek or contact Linda or I to help you with getting your chart.
Mhm.
You will need to know your birth time.
What's really interesting with, and it's going to occur in the opposite house for all the zodiac signs, is opposite is Pisces, which has that conjunction, the Mercury, Sun, Saturn conjunction, which is going to be really interesting. So the full moon's putting a spotlight because the full moon's very bright on the house, the relevant house for each zodiac sign. But in the opposite house, there's going to be a lot of focus too. So there may be kind of like this juggling, and it's kind of seems to me like a lot of it's going to be very heavily weighed in the Pisces house. So yeah, it could be just kind of keeping a lot of balls up in the air for everybody, I think.
Okay, and if you are a Virgo rising, this is going to be happening in your first house, this full moon. And the full moons, like Linda had said, are all about culminations or peaks or finishing or things are coming to fruition at that time. And in the first house, so if you were planning a new wardrobe or some kind of update to yourself, this is when that's probably going to culminate. And anything that you have to do with just yourself, this is the house where where you have started it maybe about 6 months ago.
And if you are a Leo ascendant, this full moon is going to be happening in your second house. Second house is the house to do with our income and our personal finances and resources. So there may be some high point culmination or completion to do with these matters. Maybe, you've been working towards some special project and you get that bonus from work at this time, or there's some sort of income coming to you at this time. Could be, maybe you're finally able to gain a very helpful resource, something that assists you. But as I was saying before, the opposite house, that eighth house, is very closely, it's got a lot going on. We've got Neptune there, which will come in later, which may cloud some things, but we've also got Mercury. It's going to conjunct the sun, which is a Cazimi, and that does tend to bring kind of innovative thoughts. Leading up to the Cazimi, Mercury is overshadowed by the sun, and Saturn, which is hard work and discipline, is kind of hidden by the sun as well. So there's kind of like, when it comes to shared finances and resources, maybe a lot of things going on behind the scenes or not awfully visible. But there may be some aha moment at this time. And maybe this completion allows you to move on to something else with pooling resources from another, or investment. It may have something to do with taxation, insurance, loans, debts, or it could be, we've also got quite a lot going on in the seventh house of, your partnerships. And the eighth house is also the business, not the business, the money of the partner. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. Also got Jupiter and Uranus in your 10th house at this time, and this applies for everybody. That full moon is on one side of the chart. All the other planets are between Aquarius and Taurus. So it's very kind of, just certain parts are being really kind of quite highlighted. But yeah, some high point for your personal finances, but there may be eureka moments or kind of genius ideas, or you have some sort of realization about matters to do with shared finances and resources.
If you are a Cancer rising, this full moon is going to be happening in your third house. And the third house will be combinations of things that have to do with your close community, your early education, as well as brothers, sisters, and your extended family. Aunts could even be in there. And this is, like Linda had said, the opposite side of this chart is very, very busy. This is going to be, opposing, your spiritual house to your higher education house. So this is or legal matters as well. So, but the full moon is the culminations that happen around the third house and the third house issues. And, that could be interesting with all of the aspects that are on the opposite side of the chart that full moon is kind of looking at. It's opposite. Like, I do opposites kind of like two toddlers over a coffee table. They both come up at the same time, and they're just looking at it. It's like, what are you going to do? So this is kind of that energy. It's like, what are you going to do? And definitely the moon is shining a light on it.
And if you are a Gemini ascendant, this full moon is happening in your fourth house. The fourth house has to do with our parents, our home and living situation, real estate matters, heritage. So there may be a high point culmination or an ending to do with one of these matters. It may have nothing to do with you. It may concern more your parents. There's also a very strong focus on 10th house, career and public reputation, opposite this house at this time. There's going to be a conjunction of Mercury, Sun, and Saturn in that house. So there may be sudden kind of, may seem like a revolution, well, not revolutionary, a sudden kind of idea that, like, a realization, perhaps where you need to be putting your, something that may take a while and may require a lot of discipline, but should pay off for you in some manner. It's interesting that this is happening more or less not long after. So 4 days after this full moon, maybe whatever was needed to be completed in the family sphere or to do with your home and living situation, now that's completed. This is kind of like, okay, now I can move on to this career matter, and you're kind of thinking and kind of planning, and you've had some really bright idea, hopefully.
And if you are a Taurus rising, this is going to be happening. This full moon is going to be happening in your 5th house. And the 5th house is the house typically of children or things that you create. It is also the house of hobbies or the things that you do as hobbies. Maybe like go to a concert or a sporting game. This is when things will be coming to a culmination. So if you bought tickets 6 months ago to something, this might be that you're finally attending, said concert, or something might be coming to a culmination with your children. They might be finishing up something or having things come to fruition for them. So this is an interesting time to watch, as far as even with things, your hobbies. If you are a painter, you might be finishing up something that you are painting. So, but like we said, keep, and with Taurus, you've got that Uranus and Jupiter in your 1st house. So things, are planning on going to be a little bit more adventurous because sometime soon.
Yeah, well, we've got that Mars coming up to square that Jupiter in the 1st from the 10th. That will be interesting.
Oh, sure.
And if
These are not uninteresting times.
that's the ancient Chinese curse, isn't it? May you live in interesting times. And if you are an Aries ascendant, the full moon is happening in your 6th house. The 6th house is to do with illness, pets, and service to others. It can include employees. So this could be somebody that is literally an employee, or it might be somebody that you have a supervisory role over in a workplace. Excuse me. It could be something as simple as a tradesperson working in your home or doing some service for you. And it also includes those that, work for, the public, I suppose, or the greater good, doctors, nurses, first responders, etc. So there may be a high point, completion, or ending to do with these matters. It may be maybe you've completed some nursing degree or doctorate degree. I don't know if you call it doctor. Maybe somebody's graduating as a doctor or a nurse or in some sort of course of study to do with some similar profession where you work for the greater good. You're kind of service to others. It could have something to do with a pet. It could have to do with an illness. Hopefully this may be the end of an illness. We do have a lot going on in your 12th house of your undoing, though. But, like, this is a Cazimi, like a Mercury Cazimi, and there will also be a Saturn Cazimi with the sun. And the Cazimi is like when you have the ear of the king. And in this case, the king is the sun. It's kind of like, you're some subject of the king and you've come in and, you've got his ear for this time. And, it's just, It's a special meeting sort of thing. Makes me think, particularly with regard to illness, maybe it could be like, these bad habits, these addictions, these self-defeating thoughts, habits, whatever. They say that the first thing, you need to want to get help. And, it's no good people wanting to fix you. You've got to want that yourself. And maybe this Mercury Cazimi, in the case of if it is something that is kind of, what's the word, self-inflicted in some manner, maybe this is the beginning of, a completion there. Maybe there is overcoming an addiction or something there, which would be certainly very positive. Interesting that we've still got Neptune in that house. And Neptune, amongst other things, can be associated with drugs and other substances, alcohol, etc. But yeah, high point, culmination or completion to do with one of those matters.
And if you are a Pisces rising, this is going to be happening. This full moon is going to be happening in your seventh house. And the seventh house is the house of the one other person's, the type of relationships that you have with one other person. And the relationship is a committed relationship, whether it is a long-term committed relationship with, a married spouse, or, a committed relationship with your dentist or a hairstylist. It's still a commitment. And that's what the seventh house represents, are those one-on-one relationships, even a friend. Um, so this is going to be happening in your seventh house, and it'll be things that are culminating. You do have, those other aspects that are going to be happening with this full moon that you need to be mindful of. But yeah, this is that messages that you, with Mercury and that Sun Cazimi right almost across, or almost a Cazimi. It's not quite a Cazimi yet, but that's definitely messages, and something maybe you ought to be paying attention to. So this will be happening, things that are fruition. Like if you made an appointment 6 months ago with some kind of a doctor or some kind of committed relationship, this might be coming to fruition. If you started something 6 months ago with your, a very good friend, and you want to finish it, or go on that trip or excursion you were planning on doing, this might be the time when you do that. Get together for lunch, whatever. Those kinds of things.
Nice. If you're an Aquarius ascendant, this full moon will be happening in your 8th house. The 8th house is the house of shared finances and resources. This can include things such as inheritances, loans, debts, venture capital. It could be something like, you're pooling your resources with somebody, particularly a partner. It could be the partner's money, whether that's a business partner or a romantic partner. It could be also like you're going through a divorce and this is a financial settlement that's being agreed to on this time. Yeah, there is a lot going on in your house of your personal finances, and there are likely in 4 days from this full moon, there will be a Cazimi with Mercury and the Sun. So this is often kind of aha moments, like great ideas, inspired ideas, and there's Saturn very close to that Cazimi at the time. And Saturn's quite practical and down to earth. Maybe there is some money coming in from some source, whether that's a bank, insurance company, taxation, something to do with that, in an inheritance. Maybe there's money coming in and that will become your personal money, as opposed to, other people's money. It's in your hands sort of thing. And yeah, maybe you've got some really good ideas about what you want to do with that. With Saturn, with that Cazimi, kind of grounds it a little bit, which is probably just as well, because that Cazimi is happening in a sign where Mercury is not awfully strong.
And if you are a Capricorn rising, this full moon is going to be happening in your ninth house. And the ninth house is the house of higher education, publishing, legal matters, philosophy, even astrology, religion as well. Those things, the worldly views that you have, even foreigners. So if you were planning on, you know, taking a trip, this trip might be coming to culmination if you're a Capricorn rising. If you have a legal matter, this that maybe started 6 months ago, it might be coming to a culmination around this time. If you started writing a book, it might be coming to publishing around this time. So it's all these things that are coming to fruition or culmination with associated with full moons. And in the ninth house, that's where this will be happening if you're a Capricorn rising.
And if you are a Sagittarius rising, this full moon will be happening in your 10th house. The 10th house is to do with our career and public reputation. It could be that there's been a big project at work that's coming to an end at this time, or it could be that something, more personal is happening at this time. For whatever reason, there's the spotlight, the full moon in your 10th house, which is a very visible house. You could be getting married, you could be honored or rewarded in some way, maybe you're being recognized for something at this time. And for whatever reason, you're gaining more attention at this time. Makes me wonder too, with so much activity in the 4th house, not long after this full moon, whether there's going to be a strong focus on 4th house matters such as parents, your home and living situation, and real estate matters after this. There's just a strong focus on the opposite side of the chart. The moon is kind of wrapping up whatever's happening in that 10th house. But yeah, so you can soon expect not just 4th house matters, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of ideas and maybe quite a revolutionary, or not revolutionary, quite an idea worth noting around about the 28th. So it's something to kind of think about, and it may have something to do with your parents or your home or real estate matters.
And if you are a Scorpio rising, this full moon is going to be happening in your 11th house. And the 11th house is your house of your hopes and dreams, as well as your groups and associations. So if you were planning on doing anything with a big group, this might be coming to culmination around this time. With if you were planning on joining a sports team, this would be a time where you might, be winning it or having your banquet for it. I know a lot of leagues were going on in the winter time in the northern hemisphere here. So yeah, things might be coming to fruition around this time.
And if you are a Libra ascendant, this full moon is happening in your 12th house. The 12th house is the house of our undoing. It includes places of confinement, such as prisons or hospitals. It can also include places of retreat, like monasteries or spiritual retreats, or it can be just locking yourself away. It's also a place of exile. So being far away from home, whether that's physically or even kind of mentally, by, as I said, just kind of working behind the scenes, not kind of being out in the world as much. There is a strong focus on your 6th house at this time too, which amongst other things includes service to others and illness. Full moons are about culminations, high points or endings. So there may be a high point or an ending to do with a self-defeating habit, or perhaps an addiction, or just a self-defeating habit, something that's not particularly good for you. With that strong focus opposite in the 6th house of illness, maybe there's been a little bit of a wake-up call, or maybe there will be, because on the 28th, 4 days afterwards, there will be a Cazimi between Mercury, which is thinking and communications, but also the Sun and Saturn. And Saturn's kind of responsible. Saturn is a planet of no, but it's about it's not a quick fix. It's like, you know how like they say, you know, with some things, it's not, you know, you just, it's a lifestyle. Like that's what's coming to my head. You know, maybe you're battling something that's not just like, oh, I stopped doing this, blah, blah, blah. This is a whole lifestyle change, which for somebody who's battling an addiction, and whether that's to food or alcohol or narcotics or whatever, you know, there may be a whole new need to, you know, change your mindset and yeah, all sorts of things. Anyway, or it could be just that, you know, you've been working behind the scenes, you know, on something secret, and you know, you're getting ready to wrap that up and bring that out into the world when we have the full moon in Libra.
And the stone that I have is Azurite. It is a blue stone, a very blue stone. It has It grows in masses or botryoidal, and this is the botryoidal kind of way that it grows. It's like that's probably where the matrix was. So yeah, very shiny, very dark blue. It's a very dark blue. Now that is the botryoidal way it grows. This is in mass, and this stone grows. And I'm talking about the blue part. This is the azurite part because it also grows with malachite, and malachite is a stone. It's a copper based, and that's why they grow together. So malachite is a copper based stone. So is azurite is a copper based stone, and they both grow together. And this is them growing together in mass. That's kind of interesting. But these stones, azurite works on your third eye and your crown, and the green stone will work on your heart. So this is a very good stone to connect the heart and the third eye. And I wonder why I end up getting stones, and then after I work with them for a while, it doesn't really shock me anymore why I seem to have picked that one up. But this stone is good for, yeah, it's good for the third eye, and I will be writing an article about it. It is a very interesting stone. Uh, and I would highly recommend that if you can work with it and you have aspirations, it helps with the intuition of your third eye. If you have aspirations of trying to get that mental engine going, azurite is your stone to go for, and it has a Mohs hardness of 3.5 to 4. So it's hard to wear that stone because it's so fragile, and it breaks very easily. It'll crush very easily. So you really don't want to have it as a ring, but it is a really good stone to have in your space, in your area to work with, working on your third eye and if you can get it with malachite, it'll help with both of those, getting those to the divine will going for the third eye and the heart together.
I really like that for this full moon, particularly with that Cazimi we have coming up in Mercury. And I mean, Mercury is the ruler of this full moon. And even kind of bringing in the chakra, just before this full moon, we have the Mars Venus conjunction, and then Mars is going to square Jupiter. So very interesting.
Resonates with the wind element. So yeah, it definitely has got that mercurial kind of vibe to it. So the first aspect we have is Venus is going to square Jupiter. And these are two benefics, and the aspect, a square is a challenging one. So it is a generally nice kind of aspect, but do be aware that there could be challenges with this, and that would be overdoing anything. When you have the benefics together, it's the overeating, it's the overspending, the overindulging, over drinking, over lots of leads to excesses, that's for sure. And you want to be mindful of that. But otherwise, if you do not have an issue with going overboard, then this should be a great day. Very, very harmonious and enjoyable for sure on almost any of your activities.
So it's about 3 hours after the full moon. This is happening on the 24th, so the same day as the full moon for those in the US anyway. Yeah, and that Venus is still very close to Mars. So that kind of, I mean, Venus, Jupiter aspects, like Donna said, there's that overindulgence. I think of it's like the hangover, too much of a good thing aspect. But with that Mars kind of quite close to, and it's going to come up and make its own square to Jupiter very soon. Yeah, there's the going too fast, being too hasty, and yeah, just overdoing it.
And the next aspect who we're going to be talking about is going to be Mars will square Jupiter. And, this is expansive aggression. That's how I read Jupiter and Mars. But this could also have, if we all have free choice. So, if you put your energy towards your future goals, this is a good aspect to do that under. This will be very supportive for that. However, be careful because accidents can be major. If Mars is that planet of not thinking things through and acting impulsively. And when you do that and not think things through, you can get hurt. And so make sure that you're thinking about things thoroughly before you attempt to do anything. I like this with also, it makes you decide to want to see the world. If you are a traveler and have that wanderlust, then this might be a good aspect to book those cruise tickets, plane tickets, or wherever you want to go.
Yeah, this is happening on the 27th. So this is 3 days after the full moon. We had just after the full moon, we had the Venus square Jupiter, which was, the too much of a good thing aspect. Now we've kind of 3 days later, we've got Mars coming up to square Jupiter. And as Donna said, it can be quite hasty and can be a little bit aggressive because that Jupiter can inflame things. We also, the next day, the 28th, we're going to have Cazimi which is when planets are conjunct the sun or within a degree of the sun, of Mercury, the sun, and Saturn. So kind of thinking and good ideas, but that Saturn with the Cazimi is kind of indicates this is something that's going to take a while. And then that Cazimi afterwards is like all those, well, the sun and Mercury are going to sextile Jupiter, which all sounds very positive. This just makes me think that maybe that's Mars is going to be like a little bit hasty. You think you're on the right track and you're kind of like, aha, I'm going to put all my energy into here. And you may actually overdo it doing something and then kind of have to correct course maybe because, there's this inspired idea when the next day, but it's going to be something that's going to take a long time and discipline and that. And yeah, maybe that's what this Mars square Jupiter might be.
The next aspect we're going to be talking about is early Wednesday morning. Mercury will conjunct the sun. So get up early if you want to jump in on this aspects of energy. This is when Mercury conjuncts the sun. Mercury is going forward. So this is a nice aspect to be thinking about. As Linda had said earlier, this is the time when you have the king's when the Mercury has the king's ear. So this is a time when you can when basically Mercury is getting its marching orders from the sun. It's it's like saying this is what you're going to do. This is the plan. When any planet conjoins the sun, it starts a cycle. So this is Mercury just going through its cycles.
This is on the 28th of February. We have Mercury, Sun, and Saturn all at 9 degrees of Pisces. And Mercury has 2 conjunctions with the Sun. This is a superior conjunction when Mercury is direct. It also has a conjunction with the Sun when it's retrograde. This conjunction, it's unfortunate that it's in Pisces, and I say that as a Mercury in Pisces myself, but Mercury in Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. And, you know, Jupiter is the opposite of Mercury. Mercury's detail orientated, Jupiter's big picture thinking. So you may have some inspired idea. Some people think of this as like being genius, or, you know, an aha moment, a eureka moment. With that, with Saturn so close, and Saturn is a planet that kind of demands discipline and endurance and, you know, groundedness. It's very interesting. Not long after, the Sun and Mercury are both going to make a sextile to the ruler of them at this time, Jupiter in Taurus, because these planets are in Pisces, and in traditional astrology, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. So I think this idea has potential, possibly not the most rational idea. Maybe it does require big picture thinking, or taking things a little bit more on faith, but inspired. But still, it's got that Saturn there, so it will be interesting.
I don't know, make sure things don't get out of hand.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with Cazimi's too is, like, you know, leading up to the Cazimi, which is when it makes that conjunction with the sun, it's overshadowed by the beams of the sun. You know, it's under the beams, then it's combust, where it's kind of burnt up, and then it has like that Cazimi, which can be like, you know, it's been likened to somebody on their sick bed who's been deathly ill, and this is kind of like they've turned a corner. They're not fully recovered because they still have to go through the other side of the sun. It will be burnt up after this and still under the beams, but this can be a time of a great idea. You know, it's not an idea that's usually put into practice immediately though, but it's kind of like it's turning a corner for sure. So it'd be interesting.
And as Linda was talking about earlier, Mercury will conjunct Saturn. That's the next aspect. And when Mercury conjuncts Saturn, it's a good time for serious talks or serious brain work. This is a good time to pick up that hard subject that you really need to study for. And this should help you.
Yeah, this is also on the 28th in the US. At the time, because when we talk about a Cazimi, Donna and I are Hellenistic astrologers, so we kind of tend to believe, or a lot of Hellenistic astrologers believe, that the Cazimi is valid for 1 degree either way of the conjunction with the sun. Do you follow that, or do you go with the medievals, Donna?
When I'm working with a Hellenistic chart, I go with all the Hellenistic rules. So yeah, it's within 1 degree. The modern, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know what the moderns do. I don't know if the moderns even pay attention to it, but definitely the
Renaissance.
medievals. Is it 16 or 17 minutes? I think it's 17 minutes. They only count it for 17 minutes. But even by medieval standards, which is a lot stricter, Mercury is still Cazimi. So in that brilliant kind of, in the throne room of the king, in the having the ear of the king at this time when he meets up with Saturn. So this is really quite interesting. And it's not a overly practical Mercury, but this Saturn should give it some stability, even though Saturn, how strong is he at this time? Face.
The only one who's not Peregrine.
He's not Peregrine. He must be in his own decan though, so that's something. Yeah, it should be interesting. Generally speaking, Mercury conjunct Saturn does bring some sort of groundedness to that thinking, communications, may actually slow down thinking a little bit, maybe a little bit more conservative. which, when it's in Pisces, it probably could do with a little bit of groundedness.
And the next aspect, oh, all these planets are all together. Sun conjunct Saturn is going to happen, and it's still going to happen on the 28th. So we're still working all this planetary energy, and that is a lot for one day. There's 3 things that are happening before dinner. So it's going to be it's going to feel like a very busy day. And when the sun is conjunct to Saturn, it's starting a new cycle for Saturn. Every time the planets get on in the same lineup with the sun, they're starting that cycle again, and they're basically getting marching orders for what their plan is for the next year.
Yeah, Sun conjunct Saturn, so it's a Saturn Cazimi. This is going to be a brand new Saturn, a new cycle, new discipline, new rules, new groundedness in the area to do with wherever Pisces is in your natal chart. Yeah, certainly a very strong focus during this time. And, as I said earlier, Mercury, it's moved beyond Saturn and the sun, it's a degree, well, not quite a degree away. But they're all like Mercury and the sun are going to go up and sextile Jupiter, which is nice because Jupiter's a benefic. And even Saturn, even though Saturn and Jupiter aren't going to perfect their sextile, they are very close, or they will get closer, which is interesting because, I think there's been some heavy energy and we could certainly use a little bit of uplift from Jupiter.
And the next aspect we're going to talk about is Mercury will sextile Jupiter. And this is a friendly aspect. And this it's when Mercury is the planet of messages, talking, communication, as well as, money, finances, and how those things work. It also, the processes, that's what Mercury likes to hone in on. And Jupiter is that more of the big picture. So they kind of have a weird go at it because they're kind of opposites, but they are working harmoniously together. So let's try to get the grocery list narrowed down, that's how I look at it. It's like somebody wants to be so particular and detailed, and somebody is like, let's just get dinner, and we'll just make do with what we end up getting. It's this could also, I'll speak about this. This is also a time when religious spiritual studies might spur your interest, as well as faraway places might spurt your interest. So this is
Yeah,
a funner, one of the funner aspects for this month.
yeah, Mercury sextile Jupiter, and I mean Jupiter does rule this Mercury, so it's making a connection to its ruler, which is nice. Can tend to be, even with, I think, the sextile, I think, maybe this is enthusiasm and optimism. Maybe, things have been a little bit hard, and, it may be a little bit Pollyanna-ish, or it may be a little bit over the top or pie in the sky, but I don't think it's destructive. It's not like delusional. Though, speaking of delusional, we've got Mercury coming up to Neptune later. But yeah, I don't think this is negative. I think this is like yeah, a bright spark. It's kind of like maybe a surge of optimism or hope for the future. It's yeah, I think it can be positive. We do have Mars coming up in this as well, which will be interesting because I'm hoping this Mars is going to be a direct reaction from this, as in, like, you get really enthusiastic and you kind of like, yeah, and kind of Mars kind of gets roped in to do something actually helpful rather than destructive, but that remains to be seen.
And the next aspect we're going to talk about will be the sun. It will sextile Jupiter. And, when the sun sextiles Jupiter, a lot of people can be considered a very lucky day. Definitely harmonious. You have Jupiter, who likes to do that expansive kind of look, and the sun is as well, wants to see growth. So this is a good day to plan for the future.
Yeah, no, this is just enthusiasm, feeling good in yourself, maybe a little bit tempered by having Saturn so close to that sun at the time. That can kind of, you know, make things a little bit more serious and not quite as fun. So this actually kind of helps balance that out a bit, I think. So yeah, this is definitely a bright, needed aspect at this time. I think it's just, that boost, that bit of buoyancy, bit of hope.
I wonder with that Saturn so close to the sun and Mercury, I'm wondering if we shouldn't be learning or listening to our older population, like what's going on. Maybe we could be learning something from somebody around us who might be older, or
That's a
look
good
to them
point.
for advice on solve situations. Because that Saturn just keeps on hanging around right here, at the
Mm,
back of your head,
mm,
over your shoulder. It just seems like there might be some good information or teaching from an older person that's Saturn's trying to, hone in on, being right there at the shoulder of the sun and Mercury during this time.
good point. Good point. Yeah, certainly could help ground some of the energy. But yeah, I think this is definitely just a shot in the arm at this time, which is nice, and I think probably needed by quite a few at this time. And that's on the 1st of March.
And this one can be a tricky one. It could be fun, but it could be tricky. So these are the ways that you want to look at this. With Venus is going to square Uranus. The fun part is this can give you a new opportunity to do something different with a Venusian type of thing, whether it's painting in a different style, enjoying art in a different way, going to a different restaurant on a date, or going on a different pattern on a date. Bad part with it, with a square, with Venus there, you think that things are going to turn out nicely, and with Uranus there, it could just go sideways. So don't take any romantic encounters that happen to develop right around now. Don't take them too seriously, as well as watch your spending, because you could be impulsive. I know it's not Mars, but Uranus is that little bit of we can do it, innovative ideas. And so you want to make sure that you're not overspending or overdoing almost any of the ideas, and not taking it too seriously, because this is a square. So
That Mars is still pretty close. I mean, it's 5 degrees away, but it's still pretty close to that Venus. So Venus square Uranus, it could be tension in relationships. Maybe there's change that one partner doesn't feel comfortable with. Yeah, it could be attraction to different forms of art, beauty, different, attracted to somebody very different to your usual type. Um, and this can sometimes result like in, yeah, it's kind of sudden, quick, like if there is a relationship at this time, as Donna said, this isn't a Saturn aspect. This doesn't kind of usually have a lot of staying power, but it might be fun and exciting, but it might be a whirlwind. And problem with the whirlwind is it kind of is going to dump you eventually. So, well, that doesn't sound very nice, does it? But you could get caught up in the whirlwind and then bang, it's gone just as quickly, which can be a little bit discouraging. But yeah, just tension in relationships to do with change and freedom. Maybe one partner wants a bit more freedom or autonomy, or maybe they want to mix things up a bit, which, is not what the other person wants.
I was just about to say that somebody might want independence, and the other
Mm,
person doesn't really want all that independence.
yeah.
And then talk about surprises. Mercury, it will sextile Uranus. And this can be a really good aspect if you are trying to learn math or technology or something new with that. This is a good aspect with that. This is a harmonious aspect, so it should work out well no matter what you're planning on doing with between Mercury and Uranus. They're going to sextile each other. This could also be a bundle of nerves if you let it get out of hand.
Yeah, this is happening on the 4th of March in the US. Mercury sextile Uranus could be great, innovative ideas. This Mercury is in Pisces, though. It is not the most rational Mercury. And it's also under the, well, it's combusts the sun at this time. It's burnt up by the sun. So, but, you know, might have some really great ideas. They may not be the most practical. They may seem more mad scientist-like to a lot of people, but, you know, maybe keep them there. I mean, we've still got Saturn, and I mean that Mercury is getting away from Saturn, but maybe it can lend a little bit of groundedness there. But yeah, look, just great ideas, or what you think are great ideas. They may be a little bit more madcap or harebrained, which is quite appropriate for early March, isn't it? So
Pisces. Get those brainstorming cells going and working.
yeah.
Way before Mercury conjuncts Neptune, because brainstorming, it could happen, but you know, with Mercury and Neptune, it's you don't want to be signing any contracts during this. This is it's considered a hard aspect by most people. Um, this is also a time where you could want to study spiritual or philosophy type subjects. This would be a good aspect for that to happen.
Yeah, this is happening on the 8th of March. It is probably a really good aspect for creativity, for, you know, using your intuition. It is very creative, great time for daydreaming and that. But as Donna said, you know, not the time to be signing any heavy paperwork if you can help it, you know, double or triple or even quadruple check it. Neptune just blows all those boundaries, and, you know, Mercury's in pretty, it's not in good condition. It's in detriment, it's in fall, and it's under the beams. It's still, you know, overshone by the sun, not overshone. It's outshone by the sun. It's, yeah, it can't be seen. It's invisible beneath the sun's rays. Could be a good time for doing something a little bit secretive. And I mean, Neptune is associated with kind of deception and that. So maybe at this time, if you have any, what's the word, communications, or yeah, I'd say communications more than anything, that kind of make you go, you know, maybe listen to that intuition. Maybe somebody is trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Yeah, that Mercury is hidden at this time, and this could be a great time for idealistic or altruistic thinking and planning and conversations, but the not so positive side of Neptune can be deception. So with Mercury hidden under the beams and in pretty very, it's not in good condition. So yeah, it's something to be aware of. If you get a message or you hear something and you think, or, you know, that's not right or something, you know, maybe listen to that intuition. Maybe there is actually not all being revealed, or maybe even just outright deception. So yeah, that's the 8th of March.
It's a really nice, good warning, because that does speak of a lot of unclear communication for sure.
And I mean, it doesn't have to
Um,
be all bad. I mean, like, you know, creativity, spirituality, and altruistic things, they're all a really good way to do that. And working behind the scenes to help others selflessly could be a good manifestation of that. But yeah, it's always good to be aware that, you know, the weather, astro weather is telling you, maybe just be a little bit more dubious of what you hear.
And then the next aspect we're going to talk about is Mars will square Uranus. And that is explosive anger. That is also creative change. And this is great brainstorming. If you want to move on anything, this could help with the ideas of how to get something to work.
Yeah, so that's at 5:30 on the East Coast on the 9th. 12 minutes later, we're going to have a Sun sextile Uranus. So we've got Mars coming up to square that Uranus. And, that can be fighting for freedom. That can be a little bit hasty because they do both like to move quite quickly. And yeah, this can be explosive. It's tension between wanting to move forward and wanting freedom. And, there could be a tussle there and kind of impatience, and Mars is in the superior position. He just wants to rush forward. I do like that we do have the Sun coming up to sextile Uranus not long afterwards. So this makes me think, and I think that's, 12 minutes later. This makes me think that maybe, for a lot of people, breaking free of something, asserting your freedom or independence and breaking free of something. It will be interesting. See, we've got that Mercury still really close to Neptune, so our thinking's not really clear at this time. But yeah, I just kind of think this is going to be a break for freedom for a lot of people. And it's going to come with resistance. But, sometimes you need to, push back or assert your boundaries or do whatever.
Yeah, when the Sun sextiles Uranus, this is going to be happening on March 9th. And it's the same day as the Mars squares Uranus. So this is a lot of Uranian energy. So if you feel like you want some more independence, want to just raise, or I want to say level up, so I'm just going to say it, level up. This is also the Sun is starting a new cycle with Uranus, and when these two are together, that's what starts this new cycle. And independence, freedom, innovative thought are all themes that could very well come up. I'm not so sure. I like that Pisces is there only because we're at a time where we're going to need to, with Pluto changing signs into Aquarius, we're going to need to get those innovative thoughts going. This is how the world, has always moved forward and advanced. And I think Uranus is a lot to do with, moving us forward as a culture.
Sun sextile Uranus on the 9th of March. This is taking a chance. It's embracing change for the good. Really interesting. We were talking about just 12 minutes prior, we have Mars square Uranus, so kind of like fighting for freedom. Here is this one, Sun sextile Uranus, kind of like, embracing freedom and your individuality, what makes you you, not being frightened to be yourself or show yourself. I also noticed too, even though they won't meet, I mean, Jupiter is already at 12 degrees of Taurus, but Saturn is at 11 degrees of Pisces at this time. So they're very close to being sextile themselves. And you have Jupiter, which is expansion, and Saturn, which is about, restriction. They're in a helpful aspect. So, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be like these couple of days are all going to be about like expanding, but not breaking important commitments and that. Actually, it makes me think of a meme I saw once, which is kind of like, the thing to think about when you're juggling a lot of balls is knowing which one's a glass and which one's a rubber. If that makes sense. In my Pisces mind, it makes sense. In my Mercury Pisces mind, it makes sense. But yeah, there's a struggle for freedom here. some autonomy, some independence, but not necessarily throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think there's, I think there's a lot of hope here. And the next aspect, I think, will be quite interesting. But look, what have we got? We've got Saturn, we've got the moon, we've got Sun, Neptune, and Mercury all in Pisces at the time that this aspect is exact. Yeah, it's just such a strong focus on Pisces, whatever natal house Pisces is at the time. Have a look at that, and also what's happening in your Taurus house, because there might be a pull between, well, helpful aspects between those two houses, and then wherever your Aquarius house is, that's where there may be some tension. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting time for a lot of people, breaking free, not necessarily completely free, but making things more bearable for you. As in, like, you're not feeling quite as restricted. You're given a little bit of autonomy within whatever that situation is. You may need to fight for it though, but I think it will be beneficial.
And the next aspect we're going to talk about is Mercury will enter Aries. And Mercury is that planet of communication. It's finally separated 10 degrees away from the sun. It really needs to be 15 degrees, at least I think 12, in order to get out from under the beams.
Yeah.
So it might be still affected by the sun here. But moving into a new sign, as I always say, anytime a planet moves into a new sign, this is a good time to journal, and I would be journaling right around now. This is we're starting to come upon a time of astrological significance. We're coming into eclipse season pretty darn closely. At this point, we've got less than a month, out from that eclipse that I'm concerned about. But this, with the Mercury entering Aries, is going to be a little bit more aggressive type of speech, more or faster speech, maybe a lot more communications, especially here in the United States, where it's political season, and so we're going to be getting a lot of messages, and some of them might be more on the aggressive side.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think it's really interesting that we've had those prior aspects, the Mars square, Uranus, the Sun sextile Uranus, and the Jupiter Saturn being quite close with balancing out their sextile. And we've had Mercury in Pisces, where it's not strong, it's been under the beams. It's finally in a different sign. At least it's not in detriment and in fall. It is still under the beams. It's not got any special dignity in Aries, but it's out from being in detriment and fall. That's helpful. Plus, this seems to fit, like Pisces is a little bit more self-sacrificing, or can be a little bit of a martyr sometimes. This is, Mercury and Aries, they're thinking about themselves. And I don't mean that in like, all Mercury and Aries are egotistical or that, but this is focusing on, it is a Martian sign. And, Aries is, focused on themselves. I can say that I'm an Aries. But no, it's just a different vibe. It's like, maybe there's been, like, you've been putting others before yourself and thinking about others, and that's all very admirable. But it's like when you're on the plane and they say, if the mask fall, put your mask on first. You can't help anybody else unless you're, it's no good helping everybody else put their mask on if you're going to pass out because you didn't put yours on. And what else do they say? You can't fill from an empty cup. So, this is kind of, I just think this really fits with the whole message of this thing. So yeah, it's interesting. But yes,
Well, it certainly is.
fast speech. maybe a bit blunt too. And then the new moon in Pisces.
Hmm.
Well, Jupiter can see it, so
Could be
that's
very
helpful.
interesting. You got Neptune right there with that new moon.
Could be a
Oh,
very
goodness.
idealistic new moon. Yeah, hopefully. Or a very
Hopefully a
confused
lot of
moon.
creative stuff.
A lot of what? Sorry, creative. Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah. Can't
Will
see
that be for the
planetary.
Scorpions?
Pardon?
Yeah, that'll be for the Scorpion risings, all that creativity. So all you Scorpion risings, get your creativity hats and your glitter and glue and whatever else you create with. Get it out, because that might be because the Scorpions would be so good at what we need. But they go deep. They're willing to go deep, and that all that new moon's going to happen in the fifth house. So it's where you get that creative stuff coming from. So, I'm looking forward to the Jetsons. I want to see
Hmm.
those drones flying through and the robot dogs.
Astro,
We
was
already have you press a button and the food, gets delivered. So
it? Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
looking forward to the future. I'd really like to see what it is. And with Pluto changing the sign, it's getting me very much looking forward to the kind of innovative things that we're going to be living with in our lives.
Hmm.
So this is the time to start thinking, at least if you're not doing something about, think about it.
Hmm. That new moon is sextile Uranus. Again, Uranus is getting in on the act. So it could be some surprises. Saturn and Jupiter, and Jupiter is the ruler of this new moon, are kind of within about a degree. Is it a degree? It's close to 2 degrees of a sextile, which is nice. So yeah, I I think maybe issues to do with freedom and autonomy and balancing stability and dependability with expansion are maybe going to be themes going forward. And there may be some confusion with that. Um, but yes, it should be interesting.
Sure. And I don't want to say I just don't want to single out the Scorpions. They have to have the heavy load because, there's, what would it be? Sagittarians can help with things about around the home, and uh Capricorns can think about, if you're a teacher and a Capricorn, think about how new ways of teaching, kids how to learn. It can go through all of them,
Oh
but
yeah,
we're ready for it.
yes, it will be interesting. Planets
Oh,
are
and all
beginning
the
to
planets will
spread
be
out a little
peregrine
bit.
except Mars. That's interesting.
Nothing out of bounds, so that's helpful.
That's the new moon coming up. Not there.
Yes.
Right now we have the full moon that we're going to get through. So, Linda, what are you doing, and what kind of services do you offer? How can people get a hold of you?
I'm at Scullywag Astrology. That's astrology.scullywag.com. And I offer natal readings, relationship readings, and year ahead readings. And Donna, what services are you offering and where can people find you?
Well, I offer as well natal readings and horary readings, as well as electional. And you can go on my website, which is donnabastrology.com, and there's a list of most of my services. I also work with crystal healing and working with um, energy healing, basically is what. So I work with crystals on trying to get the chakras balanced and more in a line. So once they are in a line, your body understands how to heal itself. So that's why I think that lining up your chakras is so important. And you can get a hold of me at my website or through Facebook and email as well. So
Nice. Well, thank you for listening and thank you for your likes and your comments and your shares. And if you're listening on podcasts, we'd really appreciate it if you'd rate us. And we hope that the full moon's a good one for you.
thank you for watching, and please hit the like button and feel free to share. We'd appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.